Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. It's our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and the Bitcoin ordinal monkey market. That is what we are here to discuss today, as well as all the other major NFT market headlines from the weekend. We are live on X, we are live on YouTube, both on video and audio. And we think we are without technical issues because we are all back in the safe abodes of our homes in our various locations. As always, I'm your host, Bcheck. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary, and we are delighted that we have Sammy up on stage with us again to give us all their thoughts on the market in just a moment. But just a reminder, before we get there, folks, nothing that we say here is financial advice. We do not know anything for sure. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Monday, the 26th of February. You are back from Paris. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What's going on?
GM. First of all, it is so good to be back and have that regular setup where you just can talk and don't have any worry in the world about technical issues. That is a good thing. Second of all, Paris was amazing. I absolutely underestimated that conference. I mean, not the conference, but the side events, the people that were there, the people whom I was finally able to meet up with. I loved every second of our own breakfast on Saturday. I said it in the Discord. To me, the biggest validation of that event was that we initially had planned it for 2 hours, but a lot of people ended up staying 4 to 5 hours. That filled me with so much joy. That was just a beautiful moment.
Mm.
And on another note, apparently last week I was sick and my body was very strategic about that, making me sick before the conference so I don't get the conference flu and I'm sick afterwards. Like so many others, Zamir is down, Hunter is down, everyone is now suffering and struggling after the conference. So apparently that was planning on my end to get sick before it. So I'm ready for this week because this week will be insane with Pixelmon sale today, with Portal Coin, with airdrops coming. So this is going to be a super intense week. But I'm pumped after Paris. I'm really pumped. That was an amazing conference.
I like how you're talking, Legendary. I like how you're talking. It's getting me excited, if I'm going to be completely honest. This illness stuff. What's this about getting ill, guys? You got to stop it. Just stop with the illness. I don't understand. We don't have time for this nonsense. We got to get with it. Our bodies cannot stop. We are in a fantastic bull market. As you said, so many exciting things happening this week. Maybe we can look forward to those at some point in just a moment. Sammy, you are with us in Paris too. Welcome back to the video stage with us as well. What were your thoughts about Paris? How did you find it? What were your highlights? Any key takeaways for you?
I mean, yeah, I definitely echo those sentiments. I think Paris was awesome. Meeting a lot of people that, I mean, I've personally interacted for sometimes even up to 2 years just on the internet, not knowing what they look like. And then all of a sudden you get that introduction, you say hi. It's like that penny drop moment. It's really nice. Solidify those relationships. But I think I am of the getting ill side, but I think it's self-inflicted. It's the double day hangover. 3 days of drinking it's a lot. So I think coming out of the Wild Gala on the final day, and then drinks after, it was just trying to recover. But yeah, excited to be back, get stuck in. Should be a good week.
Okay, 2 points from me. One, I don't think I'm going to get ill in 2024. Anyone want to take that bet with me? We betting anything on that?
Define ill. When does it count as illness?
I'm not going to be sneezing, coughing, spluttering in 2024.
I'll take that bet. I'll take it. Yeah.
What are we betting?
0.1 ETH.
Okay, let's do it. We can't get ill, guys. We've got to stay laser focused. We've got to attack the market. I think I'm going to get crazy ill next year. There will be a huge come down at the end of all of it. But I'm preparing the body to keep going as things stand. Second point I wanted to make for my own personal reflection on Paris, and maybe a question to you guys, is I completely agree with you. It was way better than expected, but I wonder whether that's because in comparison to 1 year ago when I went for my first time, and the first few times I started to go to conferences last year and the year before, we've just started to create a bit more of a niche for ourselves. People know us for a particular reason now. And I think it's always nicer when people can place you and know what your reason for being in the space is. Like, I think in the last year or two, we've all kind of found our place in the space. And I think that's something that's really important. And for people who are listening in and wondering, like, what it feels to do that, or how do you kind of do that, I think it just takes some time. Because I know what it feels like when you go to a conference when you're new, or when you're kind of trying to establish yourself in some particular way. It is a little bit intimidating. Like, you don't know as many people, you're trying to get invites to things, and you don't know, you're looking for a crowd to kind of be with. And I think one of my key learnings is that you create your crowd online on a day-to-day basis, and then over there is where you kind of activate that, and all of those invitations get taken care of. Like, I think we were basically booked up every single day, right? We didn't really have a day to do, or an afternoon or a lunch or anything like free time to just go and do whatever we wanted, because of all of the things that we've done and the relationships we've created over the past year. All of that was already taken care of. And I think that's something to think about for people who want to try to make the most of those moments when they go. I think that's just something to keep in mind. Legendary. Any reflections on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, agree on the being booked up, and agree on like being at a stage as a creator where you just get access to so many events. Like, basically, I didn't have a chance to speak to Sammy. I think the only time I saw you, Sammy, was at our breakfast. I said GM, I was like, hey, will I see you at another event? And it didn't work out because we were like double and triple booked, and we never met. We never crossed paths again. I think you made a very good point, Bchek. It just makes sense if you want to see people to be in the same hotel and to organize that. But on another level, to me, like, the biggest learning was the power of us doing video content. And it's no secret that you were the driving force behind that, and I was hesitant because I didn't want to be doxxed after all my 8 years in crypto. I was not really comfortable with that, because before that, I mean, I obviously still had reach as legendary as the account, but on conferences I was basically depending on like either knowing how the other person looks like, or just on luck that you talk to someone and figure out, oh, this is actually BBA, so nice to meet you and talk to you. But now that you are becoming more and more recognizable, just showing your face every day, and you see people, or people approach you, it facilitates those intros and allows you just to talk to more people, because you eliminate that need, or that element of chance, by running into someone who you have no idea, which is still a beautiful moment, talking to someone and find out, you follow them for 2 years, but it's still a massive effect that us doing video content had. And it's something that I honestly, I'm going to say it, completely underestimated. I didn't think that it's going to be that impactful.
It really makes a difference. Like, I completely agree with you. It's so not, and the thing is, I guess people are hesitant because they don't want to get to a stage where they're kind of flooded by people. Or, I mean, I think for nine people out of 10, like, that's probably never going to happen anyway, no matter how prominent you get. Like, you can probably count on two hands the people who are like so famous in the space that it becomes genuinely difficult to move around in an open space. And I guess you can kind of control where you go and how you operate to try to manage that. But I completely agree with you. It makes a real difference for people who you don't know, but they know you. So I would encourage people to give it a go. And I know sometimes people are skeptical in this space, and maybe if you're operating on the bleeding edge of information and want to share things which might not be appropriate for maybe your professional workplace, and like, I get why sometimes people want to, or need to be anonymous, but there's real value in it because you can kind of get lost otherwise. Sammy, any reflections on that? I know I saw loads and loads of people because I don't think you're as I mean, you've just started coming on the show as much, but you definitely don't post as much as yourself. And loads of people were like really delighted when they found out you were who you were. How was that experience for you? Like the first time kind of going through that?
Yeah, I think most of the people that I've spoken to or have approached me at this conference have been people that I've met face to face at previous conferences. So I'm less visible online, but I'm starting to kind of do more of that stuff similar to you guys. And I'm seeing a benefit. There are people that will come up to me occasionally, be like, "Oh, I've seen you on the Modern Market," or they've met me at previous conferences. But I think there is that value that I'm going to have a conversation with someone, and then the penny drops as to who you are. It takes time, but once you've made that connection at future conferences, it kind of compounds. So I think for me, that's the importance of going to these conferences, because you solidify your relationships with people. You have this internet relationship for a period of time, but I don't think it's as strong until you have that face-to-face contact. So yeah, I think it's extremely valuable.
And the other thing, this is my final point on it before we get into the headlines, like this is more of a structural decision, less to do with the personal emotion of wanting to connect with people. It's like the thing about putting video media out there is that I think other people feel like they're getting to know, like you're getting to know multiple people every day. You're not getting to know them necessarily, but they're getting to know you. And so when they approach you, they're coming with all of these hours of like interaction with you, even though you haven't been there. And it just creates like a level of familiarity, which is really nice because you've managed to reach them without having to actually meet them, which is just such an unbelievably powerful thing. So this is nothing to do with Web3, nothing to do with NFTs, just about the power of kind of Web2 media, where you can scale in a way bigger way than what you might have thought possible before, which I think is very powerful. And the final thing is that at some point in time, we can feed these videos into the AI and see what we produce, get some AI versions of ourselves producing the content. That's like stage 4 of the roadmap. I don't know if Legendary knows that bit yet. But okay, let's get into the headlines. As always, the headlines are pinned up top in the snapshot from the previous 48 hours from the weekend. We're going to bring you all the news. If you do find it brings you some value today, please do give it a like. So starting with some price action, we've got Bitcoin been fairly flat at this 51K range. ETH has been outperforming a touch. It's gone over 3K and is holding there for the moment. Solana is at $102, 8 but 1.9. In terms of headlines, we've got Bitcoin NFTs holding 5 of the top 25 spots now, and the Node Monks are up to the 4th highest NFT market cap. They are now the 3rd highest price NFT PFP in crypto, 4th in market cap. Bitcoin NFTs hold 5 of the top 25 spots: Monkeys, Arsic, Frogs, OMB, and Puppets. And this was a thought for Moon Overlord. I honestly expect at least half the top 25 NFT in terms of market cap price to be on Bitcoin Ordinals sooner rather than later. Got some discussion points on that in just a moment. Number 2, crypto Twitter seems to think regulatory concerns will subside after this Uniswap fee switch. Legendary is going to explain that in more details in a moment. So we'll get into that in a bit. And finally, Blast, 47 winners were announced at the end of the day on Friday, but the chain experiences its first $1.5 million rug. So we're going to talk about some of the opportunities there, also some of the potential costs. Very, very important opportunity coming up. Getting into some notable sales, we saw Tyler Hobbs selling a Fidenza for 75 ETH on secondary, Bored Ape King selling for 39.69 ETH, and a Cyberkongs Genesis selling for 19.3 ETH. Sammy was talking to me about that last week, saying that he likes the Cyberkongs. Getting into some floor prices, got CryptoPunks at 56 ETH, Bored Apes at 22.5, Mutants at 4, DGods at 2.9, Captains at 4.9, Azuki's at 5.8, down 5%, Penguins slipping 18.7, down 3%, Mad Lads at 190 Solana, and the Noun's winning bid was at 7.7 ETH. Legendary, that is the price action. Those are the headlines. Before we get into this discussion on Bitcoin, any numbers catching your eye?
Before we get into the Bitcoin discussion, I would probably point out the Cyberkongs, because they've been on a very, very significant run, and they are, as you said, like with that sale back up to 20 ETH, and I think they've been down all the way to like 5-ish ETH. So seeing that momentum in what I think is like one of the OG communities and has a lot of very, very famous people in there from the last cycle, is a cool movement.
Yeah, interesting. Sammy, why was it that you were talking to me about CyberKongs just a couple of days ago, saying that you liked it for some particular reason?
I mean, well, as Legendary touches on, the provenance is one thing, but I think there's a number of elements that probably they're positioning themselves pretty well. You've got the whole move to the Ronin network for some of their collections, which
Interesting.
I'm bullish on Ronin. I think from a gaming standpoint, it's very pro community. So pro creators as well. So creators are flocking to Ronin. So you've got free publicity for the games, whether it's Pixels, Aperon, now CyberKongs, Axie. You probably see a resurgence from those. I'm also interested with with the banana token. If you hold a certain number of banana and you own a Genesis Kong, you can enter Kong Capital, which is effectively a VC fund. So that's quite an interesting spin-off to that particular thing. It's kind of, I don't know if it's community organized, but that struck me as kind of like the Spirit DAO of Azuki. And there's just a number of other things that are kind of popping up that I'm just like, okay, well, there's something here. They've been building. They've been known to build in the past. They've done some pretty good creations in the past. They innovated right back with the ERC20, the banana token, with the I mean, they started that whole movement that I guess Anonymized followed, EtherOrcs, and all these other collections started doing similar things back in 2021. And I think we're reaching that next iteration of innovation. I think they're probably going to be one of those collections that does that. And I could easily see, I mean, the floor price of the Genesis Kongs, I think they reached about 200 ETH at one point when ETH was like 4K per ETH. So you can imagine, like, I could probably see that go back to that point if you get some sort of momentum going. And they have a very thin floor, so there's not that many listed. You could easily rip through it if people decided that they wanted into Kong Capital or whatever. So I think that the creator program that they've got going on at the moment, so they've got applications for that, could be quite interesting too.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, it's definitely one that hasn't been on my radar most recently. But I do see value, and I mean, I don't know the technical details of it, but I do see value in some type of VC style capital thing where if you join, you're going to get access to some type of deal flow. I saw someone else tweeting recently, I think it was the Kanpai Pandas founder, saying something about they've got all of this deal flow. Can someone manage it for them? They've got all of these airdrops potentially coming. If someone wants to give them an airdrop, he'll invest in them. So like there's something happening at the moment in NFT projects where deal flow is alive and they can potentially get access to it or be a part of it depending on what happens. There's like a few things happening at the same time. Yes, the community can receive the ERC20 token as the project airdrops, but equally, like there's the opportunity to invest beforehand, right? So I think what the founder was suggesting, and people would need to double check that it is the person I'm saying and not someone else, but it was saying, well, if you agree to airdrop this to this community, I will invest in your round. So it's like this interesting play now for founders, and I've seen other people post about this as well, to say like, look, your job as a founder for the next 6 months, forget what it was 6 to 12 months ago in the bear market. Right now, it's to make sure your community gets airdrops. Like that's the job of the founder right now, because you can't just keep watching Pudgy Penguins get all of them, Sappy Seals get all of them, Node Monks get all of them, or Mad Lads get all of them. Like you have to try to participate in this if all of your peers are going to be getting some of this action. So maybe I've taken that in a slightly different direction to you, but I just felt like it was connected. Legendary, any reflections on that before we hit the headlines?
Absolutely. I think Wob had a post on that as well, which was just trying to find as you were speaking, where Wob said that the amount of projects that are reaching out to him regarding potential airdrops is like just absolutely insane. And connecting that to potential early investments makes sense from multiple perspectives. I mean, first of all, we just spoke about how powerful it is to get like a PFP community behind a potential airdrop, real users, presence on the timeline, etc., etc. Everyone's happy and talks about when they get free money. but then also having an early investment or even being able to extend part of that round to maybe some of your more prominent holders, some of the whales, or find a way to just allow a majority or a bigger part of the community to have at least a chance to participate in that round, suddenly then adds an additional benefit to the project wanting to offer the airdrop as well, and like creates another layer of synergies, which I think makes it even more appealing for projects and PFP companies or PFPs to collaborate on that airdrop plus fundraising meta.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder whether, and I've seen some people tweet about this as well, and we saw the blast rug, and we're going to get onto that a little bit later, but I wonder to what extent founders are going to need to be a little bit careful with all of this stuff, right? Because people realize now that you've got this really active group of vocal people. Yeah, of course, multiple protocols want to use you for your attention, but the majority of protocols are not that. Well, they might be good products, but they may not be that well developed. They may not be the safest. They may not be well intentioned. There'll be a proportion of these people who are very much using the NFT communities instead of trying to like build with them or kind of make it a mutual agreement. So that's definitely something founders will have to try to keep in mind. But we'll discuss a little bit where the responsibility lies for those types of things when we talk about the blast rug a little bit later, because there was a little bit of controversy about that on the timeline over the weekend. Before we get into the headlines, just want to throw to Funky and Jack to get their thoughts on this for the moment. Funky, welcome to the stage, my friend. What are your thoughts on this kind of airdrop meta, NFTs, and how communities might be leveraging the current situation?
Well, thank you so much, and welcome back, B-Check. It's good to hear your voice again. I just, little quid pro quo, never hurt nobody, right? I mean, this is effectively what they're doing. You give me some airdrop, I'll invest in your seed round. So, I think it's a good meta, just ties into everything. But to your point, I don't know what kind of trouble you can get into, just being solicitous in that regard. But beyond that, this is, I think you're going to see these kinds of collections gain favor. Look at the Kingdom. We've discussed this before, where we have sort of these kinds of investments and stuff like that. We don't offer airdrops or anything else, right? That's like you tap into the deal flow by being an owner. But yeah, I can see this proliferating. I really can, just because of the airdrop being so hot and people who are KOLs in the industry, they have the right pull and the connections. It's going to happen.
Good take. I like that. Jack, welcome to the stage, my friend. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, honestly, it's clearly why some projects are running right now. I think we've seen the narrative run for way over a couple of months with Mad Lads. Obviously, first when Sol was pumping, just getting dropped any token, even the phone, even the Saga phone. The narrative's been very strong for a while. I think we need to be careful, and my advice to projects would be that you still need to curate these drops in some way, unless you've just got a narrative that you are in no way associated with this drop. Because there's two things that could happen. A, it could be a rug and it could get people hurt, or it could even be a drainer in some sense. I'm not sure about the technicalities behind that. It's different on each chain, but there could be opportunities that people find with this new tech and with the opportunities and with the bull run to try and basically take advantage of that narrative and use it to just drain a bunch of people. On top of that, I just think it can't be every shitcoin. It really can't. Like, if these projects are working towards that being part of their narrative, that they will get those allocations, they need to do the legwork and make sure they're partnering with reputable drops, with real gaming projects or real projects that can actually, basically provide benefit to the holders.
Yeah, it's a really good point. The thing I was just going to say to extend that a little bit is not just the idea that you obviously do not want to partner with drainers or full on scams that are going to take advantage of your community in that way, but also, if you think about it, even projects that are well intentioned, right? Even projects that are got good people running it, well intentioned, if that project's going to airdrop you something and it's not a well designed thing and it doesn't end up being much, like, your community is not going to be happy if they on the face of it, get excited about some potential airdrop, and it turns out to be something useless. Right? The headlines have been Pudgy Penguins get like $10,000 of dimension, Mad Lads get God knows how many dollars of pith or whatever it is. Those are the headlines. Those are the things that people want. If it's going to end up being $20 of some random token, then unfortunately in this space, that's probably not good enough, given that you're going to have to claim on Ethereum mainnet and it's going to cost you $13 to do that. So I think it's not just scams that you need to avoid, which might be more obvious to detect. You're going to actually need to do like a bunch of actual research into projects and determine whether like it's actually a good and viable thing. And that's really hard because, as we know, as angel investors now, Legendary, Sammy, and myself, like to go through the tokenomics, to go through all of the stuff, that's almost a job in itself on top of all the other things that you've got to do. So project founders, it's going to be a challenge to assess these things in a full and proper way. Legendary, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I look at it in tiers. Like if you're a tier 1 project, you want a tier 1 partner, so that if your Mad Lad is like a 5-figure asset, you don't want a $10 airdrop. And there's like basically 3 ways. You're a tier 1 project and you attract a tier 1 partner. That's great. You're a tier 2, tier 3 project and you punch above your weight and get a way bigger airdrop in proportion to your floor price. That's amazing, and it's going to give you more upwards momentum. And if you hit it low, like as a tier 1 project, getting a tier 4 $10 airdrop, then that's gonna probably make you the content of a couple memes on the time limit, at least for a while.
Yeah, that's interesting. Taking like the tiers, how we talk about tiers for exchanges, and now like using that using that system of categorization for projects, and maybe you have to match up in that way. Interesting way to think about it. I think that's probably the way that it could go. And even if people aren't thinking about it like that yet, maybe subconsciously that is how people are thinking about it. I like that that framework. Okay, let's get into the first headline of the day then, which is about the node monks. So I'm going to share my screen here, but I'll read it out for the people who are listening in. Shout out to all the watchers on YouTube, by the way. I just call them watchers. It's called viewers, isn't it? That's a strange way to describe them. Shout out to all the viewers on YouTube. I think we've got quite a few today. That's cool to see. We're also streaming on X as well, but obviously predominantly listeners on X. But let's get into this. Monkeys are now the 3rd highest price NFT, PFP in crypto, 4th in market cap. So what you can see here is a little chart that Moon Overlord shared. It's got Bored Apes at the top with a 22.7 ETH floor price. That's $68,000, market cap of 687 million. Pudgy Penguins at 519 million with a 19.3 floor price. Okay, so this is a day ago, so things have dipped a little bit from here, but that's okay. Mutant Apes was next at 3.94 ETH. That's 232. Node Monks was next at 206, and then after that was actually Chromie Squiggles. Legendary, what do you think about this at the moment? Because I want to actually introduce a different tweet that he was writing about, and something that I'm getting increasingly persuaded by as I think about this stuff. He wrote, Bitcoin is the major leagues. It's where the most money is. Coins and NFTs are a natural fit for it. If I can play in the major leagues, why would I go to a single able in the minor leagues and trade on the 7th best L1? Why trade down if you don't have to? Sammy, want to hear your thoughts as well, but Legendary first.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think it's very similar to the discussion that we have around like kind of ETH versus Solana, and the argument going against ETH and being like, Solana is such a cheap place to do business and cost of transaction is way lower. Why would everyone want to trade on ETH? Whereas my point is that, look, you have a tremendous amount of economic activity on ETH. You have a tremendous amount of TVL there. And just the reason, yes, it is more expensive to transact there, but like everyone is there. It's like you're shopping on a high street and you have the luxury stores. It is more expensive to be there, but the profit margins are also higher there, if you want to put it like that. And that's not me dismissing Solana at all. I love the blockchain. Again, been using it for years. Don't want anyone to think that I'm hating against Solana. It's just a different target audience that you're addressing. But if you then basically extrapolate that to BTC versus ETH, quote unquote, then you have the difference being, yes, obviously BTC is undoubtedly the number one cryptocurrency, but it doesn't have that economic activity in the sense of the infrastructure, the protocols there yet, but it's being built. And like for everyone who has been following Ordinals for a longer while, I was like impressed because I got in early before there was like any kind of wallet. Then we were trading spreadsheets, and it was super fast. And the time they took to spin up wallets, exchanges, and everything for that was like incredibly fast. And if you now look at the conversations that we had over the recent weeks, where we talk about BTC layer 2s, we talk about airdrops on BTC, about DeFi protocols that suddenly people are farming. That's that kind of economic activity that we are seeing on ETH. And that is slowly relatively, I think it's fast for some people. It's slow because it didn't happen like over the last weekend. It is being built on BTC. That to me makes a lot of sense. That then Ordinals are also getting exposure.
What do you think about this point of like there being them like? I think what Moon Overlord was saying is just like he's trying to really simplify it in a sense. It's just like it's the God chain. The most.
Yeah, that I disagree with because this is the point that I was getting to. Because if I follow that logic, then it would be like, I'm on ETH, I don't use Solana. Because there's economic activity on ETH, I have the protocols there, I don't need to use anything else. And I disagree with that because I think that there's like the need for multiple chains, alternative layer ones, there's different target audiences, and it just doesn't make sense for certain activities or for certain target audiences to be on a specific blockchain. Like you wouldn't want to have gaming on an L1 solution when make 100 transactions a day and pay $2K a day to play a game. So I disagree with that from that perspective.
What about this though? This is where I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but I think we're kind of making separate points. And I think two things can be true at the same time. I think, yes, obviously gaming can't be on Bitcoin. That can go somewhere else. Solana can exist and have a healthy, flourishing ecosystem. But I think this, which is what maybe Moon is suggesting. I think two things. Let me try to articulate it. One, if you're playing in a particular ball game at a higher value, and it's where the most liquidity is, then that might make sense for you to play in more. So yes, stuff on ETH can thrive. Yes, stuff on Solana can thrive. But if you want to play in the high stakes game, kind of like if you're playing poker, you want to play at the high table, then you're not going to leave the high table. You're just going to stay at the high table. And then the second point is that if you believe that this is the high table, it hasn't been priced as the high table for a long time. And that's why last week I was saying, and I don't know, I had to move some money around. I was buying some Bitcoin separately. I wanted to buy Bitcoin instead. But like I was saying last week, like 10K for a Bitcoin, not a Bitcoin node, a node monk was just too cheap. Like 10K for one. I appreciate it's a lot of money. But if a mad lad is 20 and a node monk is 10, that's just too cheap. And that's why I was saying that last week. And I just think I agree. If I agree with the thesis that it's the high table, which I think that it is, everything had been underpriced at least to this point and could still be realistically if we are thinking in that perspective. What do you think about that, Legendary? And Sammy, want to hear your thoughts on this in a moment too. Funky and Jack too. I can see your hands raised. We'll come to you.
That I agree with. Like if you continue that analogy and you talk about the high table, then to me BTC is the most luxurious casino, but they only have one roulette table in there that you can play at, and you can't take 500 mil and do a lot with them right now, other than waiting for more things to come to life. Whereas on ETH, not the most luxurious casino, but there you can take your 500 mil and throw them into Eigenlayer, and you're not going to even be 10% of the TVL. And that I agree with. Like if that economic infrastructure is being built, which again, it's going to be super hard to catch up to ETH though, because of the devs that are working on ETH, because of the years of work that went in, and just because of the relative simplicity compared to building on ETH and EVM compatible blockchains versus building on BTC. it's going to be hard to catch up to the same level and offer that same level of complexity. But that analogy of the high table and that relative underpricing of assets, I can get behind.
Okay. I see what you mean. Definitely agree with them obviously being like way far back in development, but that's why I was trying to make that distinction. It's like, yes, it's less developed underneath. Yes, there are more things that you can do with your capital on ETH, but I'm getting the sense more that this narrative is coming up higher, which is this is the high table. This is the high table and everything is underpriced if that is true. Sammy, your thoughts on that? Then want to go to Jack with his hand raised.
Yeah, I think the chain, the future is like multi-chain. I think that you can't necessarily, well, not everyone's going to be able to play at that high table. You're only going to have either institutions or individuals that are high net worth, have a lot of capital. I think that historically, things like the Lightning networks, like layer 2s, haven't necessarily done what they've said on the tin. As there's been high gas fees, you can't necessarily, it's not necessarily reduced that cost. Whereas this new wave of L2s or is it BVM, that could potentially solve that. And then all of a sudden you've got people playing into this narrative that maybe they're pricing in that the expectation that comes through. And that will become like a dominant chain and it will become cheap to transact. So maybe you're getting in early where there's friction. So people are kind of front running it, trying to get these assets because they know that, or they think they know that the future is Bitcoin. But I think there will be certain elements of applications that are built on different chains that are probably used more than others. It comes down to development. Like Solana, like I love Parcel. Like I transact on that because I think real world assets, real estate, that's interesting. So I'll do stuff on there. ETH, as Legendary says, there's a lot of TVL. There's a lot of activity. There's historically over the past like 3-4 years, there's been a lot of stuff that's built on there. You've got layer 2s that are building on there. You've got like those have all got to settle on ETH. So there's going to be that activity. So it's almost like that's going to be the future as well. But yeah, it's very much like you'll have different categories of people interacting with different chains for whatever reason. I don't think it's going to be a one-horse race.
Yeah. But okay, I mean, I agree with this stuff, but I think again, we're making different, distinct points. I think yes, there are different categories of people. I'm just going to be a little bit argumentative here because I really like this new thesis that we're talking about. Like, I do think, yes, there are different categories of people. Yes, they're going to be more chains. Yes, blah, blah, blah. But that's kind of not the point. The point is Bitcoin is the top one, or at least that's the position here. And I don't know, like even if you're doing all of your interesting stuff on Parcel, which is a really cool app, which by the way, they've announced their airdrop for, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Even if that's true, like I think all of those things that you just said can be true. And you can have a group of people who are playing on this top table where things are currently underpriced if it is still the top table. Would love to hear the thoughts from Jack, who is obviously a Bitcoin DGOD holder but also a holder of DGODs on ETH as well. So Jack, you're probably quite well placed to speak to this. How have you felt this conversation? Like, where do you sit in this conversation so far?
I'm with you, B. I think, look, I think it's smaller number theory, and we've seen that work out in the past. I do think that there's a ton of narratives for Bitcoin right now as well. And realistically, it's the first time those narratives are going to come into play with ordinals existing. So you've got the halving coming up literally basically next month, not quite. So April 19th, you've got the halving. For those who don't know, that's like literally going to be like a huge event, and normally starts to indicate like all-time highs for the underlying cryptocurrency being Bitcoin. I think you've got runes. I know we really struggle to sort of put a stamp on exactly what they are, but essentially they're just a new token standard on BTC, like a new ERC20, supported by like basically the whole community on Ordinals, but Bitcoin generally as well. They've got like these 13 character tickers, which basically means you can start actually titling these, these tokens in a way that like meme coins are titled, so you can actually give them a name. So I think that's another opportunity. And when you look at NodeMonk's recent success, really just skyrocketing from 0.1 a month ago when Bitcoin was cheaper to 0.4 right now. I think those narratives are all just coming into play. People are betting on the halving being a big moment for Ordinals 2. They're betting on the fact that these runes are also going to basically create a similar airdrop mechanic or like a chase mechanic. So the biggest projects are going to do similar to Mad Lads, which we started talking about at the start of the show. And also whitelist opportunities. There's some real projects now, again, on that smaller number theory, on the fact that big projects are going to build on Bitcoin because they're going to see that's where the volume is. We're talking $15 million just on Node Monks this week. Just this week, $50 million worth of Bitcoin volume on Node Monks. Just for perspective, people are going to see that.
Yeah, I know, mate. Thanks for that. It's just making me uncomfortable because it's making me the second question I'm starting to think now, and we're going to have to move on to it, but I'm sure we're going to be talking more about Ordinals as we move forward is, okay, fine, we're thinking this type of thing about Bitcoin, but I'm just wondering from a personal perspective, like, yes, I have one Node Monk, but like as a proportion now of the other NFT bags. So like, remember when you think about your portfolio, often people will be like, okay, well, what's my ETH exposure to USD, to Bitcoin, to Solana? Maybe you've got some other alts as well. And you think about that, but then within your NFT exposure, maybe you're thinking, okay, well, I've got X amount dedicated to ETH NFTs, X amount dedicated to Bitcoin NFTs, X amount dedicated to Solana NFTs. And I'm just wondering out loud, like, or live, damn, like, I don't know, even for thinking this stuff a week or two ago or 3 weeks ago, I don't know if that's the right proportion. That's something I'm going to have to check out myself in just a moment. Legendary, any reflections on that? I really want to get onto the other important news because there's some interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, the additional complexity, and Sammy also just commented that in our private chat, is when you then also will talk about cross-chain collections.
Yeah.
Collections moving, omni-chain collections. But yeah, we can't get into that now because otherwise there's no way we can touch on any of the other news.
Sure. Okay, guys, look, I think there's a really interesting discussion on Bitcoin. I think it's something we're going to be talking about a lot more. I think we've started a conversation here, which we were going to want to continue. So very interesting perspective from everyone who provided them, but we've got two other really big pieces of news. So we don't want to not get to them today, which sometimes we don't, but we definitely don't want to get to them today. So I'm going to do the Web3 roundup from the snapshot, and then we're going to get into both of them so that we can just get up to speed with what's going on. So starting with the Web3 news, as always, which is in the snapshot pinned up top, we've got Justin Sun, our favorite ETH whale, buying another $41 million of ETH. We love to see that. Number two, founder of Blur, Pac-Man, likes the Uniswap move, sparking rumors Blur could do the same. He tweeted, "This is a great proposal. Excited for the Uniswap community to implement this and for the Blur community to be able to learn from Uniswap's experience." Legendary is going to break that down in just a moment. I think it's very, very significant. So interested to hear that breakdown in a second. Next, real estate focused DEX Parcel, Sammy was just mentioning this, reveals it will airdrop 7 to 8% of its supply to its users. We've been talking about this a lot. There'll be 1 billion tokens, 7 to 8% airdropped. Estimated initial parcel in circulation will be 10 to 12%. I don't even think it's too late to farm that one if you would like to. And it's one of those that you could just lock up some USDC, just let it sit there and get to work for you. So maybe research that if you need to. Next, Pixelmon community presale goes live today. I believe it's already gone live, and that lasts for 48 hours, I think. But check out the details there. And finally, NFT Stats joins the Meme Land team. Huge hire, great friend of the show, great friend, personal friend too of us at the show. Congrats to NFT Stats for joining the Meme Land team. Very, very excited to see what he does over there. And finally, Yuga Labs announces $1 million prize pool for Dookie Dash, which is very big news. Feels like a long time ago, so I think that was announced a couple of days ago. That's the Web3 roundup from the rest of the space. Legendary, do you want to take it over and get into this Uniswap fee switch, which has got crypto Twitter thinking that the regulatory concerns that we have could be gone sooner rather than later?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at DeFi platforms like Uniswap having their token Uni, which is a governance token, and that's the structure of many DeFi protocols. It is because of the fear of being classified as a security as soon as you start doing a revenue share with your token holders. So basically Uniswap is earning fees and is sharing a part of that fees or all of that fees with their Uni token holders, is something that hasn't been done yet because of that regulatory worry that it might be classified as a security. And it seems like this is about to change. That is what the chatter on CryptoX is indicating. And I think before I get into those individual posts that you also pointed out on the snapshot, I think this is relevant not from only the isolated perspective of obviously that being a big driver for Uniswap, for the Uni token, but I think this is relevant if there's really regulatory news to come on that, and it's not an issue anymore to do a rev share, and then not longer risking being classified as a security because of that. It's essentially something that other protocols have to follow through with, not only when it comes to DeFi protocols, but that applies to all protocols that essentially have a token. I remember a very long discussion that we had with Kais from OK Bears and how they said they think how can they reward their community without basically turning the bear into a security, because they have a collection with Zara, but there's a they just can't do a profit split on a company level with all of the bears, etc. And one of the posts that you pointed out in the snapshot, and also sharing the screen for those watching on YouTube, is by Evan SS6 saying, I was already balled up as fuck on ETH, but the combo of this Paul Greval being a legal counsel to Coinbase tweet and Uni fees, which has me thinking of a large victory, was won on regulatory side, and that we will soon find out about it. And the post by Paul Greval that he's referencing reads, a word of advice to outside counsel: don't front run your in-house counsel in sharing good news with the business partners. Let them have that moment.
So just for context there, if that's like a lot of information to take in at the same time, obviously Paul is at Coinbase and he is the in-house counsel. I've worked as both in-house counsel at these big companies. I was in-house counsel, well, technically in-house at Amazon for a period of time. And I've also been outside counsel when you're working in private practice, when you're at the law firm. So what he's saying is let the in-house team share the good news with their business partners rather than your outside counsel, like your private law firm, kind of front running you and giving them the chance to do that. And I guess what they're suggesting there is that this good news is that a lot of the security debate could potentially be going away, because that's what Coinbase has been arguing with the SEC about for all this time, really pushing the narrative, or not pushing the narrative, but pushing the argument that yes, ETH is not a security, and they've been having that argument out all the time. Legendary, did you touch enough on? Do you want to touch any more on the fee switch and any the technical aspect of that, or just the significance of that, or do you feel like you've done that?
No, I think on the significance, just underlining the point. If you think about how you had to hide or build tokenomics around that, or find other distribution mechanisms to like justify the point of having a token, and do that in a not very straightforward way. How we also spoke about the fact that certain jurisdictions like Singapore, Hong Kong have a massive regulatory advantage because they can talk about a financial benefit tied to a specific token. And if that playing field is being leveled and it has the same rules basically that Singapore, Hong Kong, parts of Asia can play with, the US can play with that, then not only does it like further drive competition, which is very, very good, it just basically puts the pressure on so many protocols, NFT projects, whoever has a token, to now find a way to be more than a governance token and share some kind of profit revenue. Again, with Uniswap, they make fees, they share it with the token holders.
Sure.
And I think like this is a fear that has been holding the space back at a larger scale. And like often there's a question, okay, why does this protocol need a governance token? I don't want to be involved and vote on whatever things.
Yeah.
And if this link is very straightforward, they have a token that's a rev share. It's like it's de facto an equity stake or stock in the company. That is a massive catalyst for the space.
Huge catalyst. And I guess that's why people got excited when Pac-Man tweeted this, quote tweeting the kind of Uniswap information where he said, this is a great proposal, excited for the Uniswap community to implement this and for the Blur community to be able to learn from it. So as you say, maybe that can, the Uniswap fee switch getting turned on could act as a catalyst for other protocols to say, okay, well, maybe we can do the same thing. Blur obviously does generate revenue too, and is one of the biggest protocols already. So maybe they could do something similar. Very, very interesting stuff there. I think that's enough to just touch on because we want to get to the Blast opportunity, the Blast news, which we think is very significant. Maybe if one of us could change the space's title while I just set it up, and then I'm going to come to Sammy to maybe set up Blast, the opportunity there, all the happenings going on in his not so secret spreadsheet where we've been kind of trying to log some of the opportunities there, and maybe touch on a little bit the hack that just happened recently as well. So if you were not aware, the Big Bang judging is complete. More than 3,000 teams started building on Blast during the competition, and the team picked 47 winners with the help of a certain number of judges. They obviously say this, and I think this is important. They said, before we highlight the winners, we want to make one thing clear. It's impossible to get it 100% right. 50% of YC founders were previously rejected before getting accepted. They are going to be incredible teams that we missed in the judging. While we're excited to highlight the winners, we are just as excited about the teams who submitted, who did not get selected. The average quality of submissions was impressively high, which made it all the more challenging to select winners. So a couple of points on the winners, which you can actually go and see at at the link at the end of this thread, which you can get to from the snapshot. They kind of span a variety of different sectors, and those winners are going to get co-promotion from the Blast official account, which will obviously be very beneficial, I think. But they also said that there will be a pool of Blast tokens available to the other groups of people who didn't win. So lots of these protocols have been saying that 100% of their developer allocation will be going to their users. So that's one of the first opportunities, like you use their protocols and they intend on giving you their allocation of Blast, but it's not just the winners. So I think the winners will get more allocation, but even the people who are not the winners will get some allocation, and so they will still be rewarded. Want to go to Sammy here, who's been kind of tracking a lot of the protocols on Blast. We've got a couple of minutes left, Sammy. What are your thoughts on the communication of the winners from the Big Bang competition? What can people be doing, thinking about to try to make sure they're well placed for this upcoming Big Bang?
Well, we can't give away all the secrets, but I think there's a number of segments. I think you touched on that. There was probably 8 segments. So you've got, I think it's spot decks, perp decks, infra, NFTs, gaming, social-fi, gamble-fi. So there's a range of different segments that those kind of slot into. And I think they've distributed those categories fairly evenly. So just coming back to that runner-up point, there's probably some categories that are probably more oversubscribed than others. So I think just looking at that, there's probably a number of things that I was looking at that probably didn't make that top list, but then there was some honorable mentions and other lists as well that they included. And like you mentioned, I think the distribution of Blast tokens for that 50% developer share, that if the product's good, people use it, then I think there's no reason why value wouldn't accrue to the native tokens that they create, because there's demand for it. So I think there's a number of different projects that have struck my attention. There's a number of big backers. So I think Mangrove's got like backing from Wintermute. You've got Polychain backs a few, Binance has backed a few. So I think just having that backing, there's probably a little bit more due diligence than some of the other projects, which I think just touching on that hack recently, I think there's 500 ETH that was hacked or something like that. I don't know the exact amount, but people who were kind of getting into that, like the due diligence element was probably lacking. But if there's so many protocols that are coming through, like how can you do your due diligence? I think ultimately you're responsible for your own investments, or whether you engage with some of these protocols. And at the end of the day, they are early stage startups, they're early stage ventures. So there is high risk. Most of these projects are probably not going to make it. And I think there will probably be 1 to 2 within each category that dominate. I look at Avalanche, for instance. I think there was Trader Joe and another DEX that kind of came out of the gates, and Trader Joe is a dominant DEX. So I think there'll be a similar thing on Blast. So I certainly wouldn't back one horse, but I'd diversify a little bit, but just do your research and find some of those high conviction plays and then go for it.
Sure. We're running out of time for today's show, but I just want to make 2 points, maybe throw to Legendary to close it off. I think the first thing is that I think we're going to see a lot of FUD around Blast for this type of reason. It's like it's not possible to do all the due diligence at the same time. Well, it is on a personal level, but I don't know if people are going to be able to do it all. And I think as a consequence, there'll be multiple bad actors. Like there's just definitely going to be a bunch of bad actors in the space. And I think that will transpire quite quickly, because if you think of the way that this is being rolled out, it's like, okay, there's this big, literally called a big bang competition. It's all going to happen at once. Mainnet's going to happen at once. And the people who are scammers, I don't know if they're going to be like waiting around to try to let all the excitement die. They're going to want to take advantage of it there and then. So they want to take advantage of the capital as it's hot, as people are excited. So I do think we're going to see more of this. And that's why I think it's even more important for people to be cautious. Like, be cautious, take responsibility for your own transactions, know that there's going to be a certain amount of risk attached to these things. And ideally, don't blame anyone else. Like, everyone is we're operating in an insanely risky space. So you're just going to have to take responsibility and be cautious of it. One thing that we're going to do before I throw to Legendary, one thing that we're going to do on the show is we're going to try to showcase some of what we think are like prominent collections backed by good people, something that you might want to keep an eye on. We're going to start to try to do that from this week or next. And hopefully that will be helpful. But again, even then, there's just no guarantees when we're doing these things, right? So please do bear that in mind. But we're going to do our best to cover it in the best way possible, because we think it's going to be very, very relevant. Legendary, final reflections on Blast, the opportunity and some of that kind of responsibility and where that sits before we close out the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick thought on the responsibility thing. For creators, I think it's super important to just be transparent about the things that you're talking about. And if you have like skin in the game, to be transparent about that. I don't think that being cautious is always the right thing, because if you look at, no, seriously, if you look at some of those rounds, they fill up within hours. Like, some things are gone within 6 hours. You don't have the time. Risk on Blast was different. There was more time with that. But you just don't have the time to do due diligence. So more importantly than being cautious is, if you allocate a bet to a specific protocol and you are under a significant time constraint, make sure that the bet size is that small that in case you lose it and get rugged, you still can continue to play that game, and you don't risked it all and lost it in one single meme coin, casino, DeFi protocol, whatever else you invested in.
Look, I completely agree with that. Actually, I think that's far more practical advice, because just telling people to do your own detailed research on every single project is not realistic. And we know that people are not going to do that. So if you choose not to, the sizing is important, right? Like, there's certain types of projects, or there's a certain amount of size that I won't do unless I've spoken to the founder, for example. Whereas in contrast, there are certain types of investments that I will make even if I haven't spoken to the founder. Because it's like, if it's a small amount, then you can feel more comfortable taking that risk, and depending on maybe a few other separate conversations you've had. So it's up to you to decide that sizing. I think that's a very practical, useful way to think about it. But guys, thank you so much. That was a really interesting conversation. 3 really important things I think we discussed today. We hope you enjoyed all of that. And we hope that we will see you again tomorrow. We do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every single day, live on X, live on YouTube. If you do like it, please do follow us on Twitter. The Modern Market account is growing very, very fast. And subscribe to us on YouTube. The YouTube account is growing very nicely and the metrics are going nicely too. We'd appreciate your support. Have a wonderful day. We will see you on the other side. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.